E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial is not just a story about an alien and a boy. It is a quiet reflection of broken families, longing hearts, and a yearning for connection that defined an entire generation. Most fans see it as a childhood adventure, glowing with bikes and moonlight. But beneath that wonder lies something more fragile, something the cast and crew rarely spoke about aloud. What if the magic of E.T. was born not from fantasy, but from real human loss? The separation you feel in every scene is not imagined, it is lived. What if the alien was never meant to be a creature from another world at all, but a mirror held up to our own? Let us pull back the curtain and see the truth hidden in plain sight. Because once you know what really shaped the hearts behind this film, you will never watch E.T. the same way again. The year was 1982. The world was in the middle of a technological boom and a cultural fracture. Steven Spielberg had just conquered the box office with Raiders of the Lost Ark, but deep down he still carried a wound from his parents' divorce years earlier. Out of that wound, E.T. was born. Universal Pictures expected a science fiction thrill ride. What they got instead was something far more intimate, a story told through the eyes of children who barely understood the pain surrounding them. Henry Thomas, barely 10 years old, had never carried a blockbuster. Drew Barrymore was only 6, a child of Hollywood royalty, caught in a world too big for her innocence. The cast gathered in a quiet California suburb, transformed into Elliot's neighborhood. Spielberg filmed in sequence, a rare decision that would allow the children to feel the story's evolution in real time. They met E.T. as a stranger. They said goodbye to him as if they had truly lost a friend. Every shot of fog, every glowing fingertip, every tear shed over a dying alien was a piece of that era's broken heart. The film premiered in the summer, yet it felt like winter had found a home on screen. Henry Thomas became the face of childhood wonder. His eyes held the ache of someone older than his years. In interviews, Spielberg admitted he cast Thomas because he cried not like an actor, but like a boy who understood loneliness. What most fans never knew was that Henry had lost his dog shortly before the audition. When he wept in front of Spielberg, those tears were not for the scene. They were for himself. Drew Barrymore, meanwhile, was the chaos wrapped in charm. Spielberg adored her spontaneity. He called her a spark of light in a film about loss, but her reality was already darkened by adult parties and cameras flashing far past bedtime. The girl who made the world laugh with her scream at E.T. was already carrying the weight of fame's shadow. Behind the camera, Spielberg became a father figure to the young cast. He shielded them from the harsher elements of filmmaking, yet his protectiveness carried an unspoken cost. It blurred the line between director and parent. Between control and care, the persona of innocence the film sold to the world came from a place that was anything but innocent. That was the paradox that shaped every frame. A film about childhood made by people still haunted by theirs. The studio wanted a darker ending. Universal executives argued that the alien should die in government custody, sealing the film as a tragic warning. Spielberg refused. He said the story was about hope, not punishment. That single decision changed cinematic history. Another quiet choice shaped the movie's soul. Instead of using mechanical precision for E.T.'s movements, Spielberg chose to let puppeteers work by instinct. He insisted the alien feel fragile, not perfect. To achieve that, he hired Caprice Rothy, a mime and dancer, who moved inside E.T.'s shell during close shots. The tenderness you see when E.T. tilts his head or reaches out his finger came from human empathy, not machine precision. Even the soundtrack was altered against early notes. John Williams originally composed a more restrained score, but when Spielberg saw the cut, he asked for a symphony of feeling. The music swelled with heartbreak and release, and Williams delivered what would win him yet another Oscar. Each of these decisions defied logic, yet preserved emotion. Had Spielberg listened to reason, E.T. might have ended as a cautionary tale. Instead, it became a prayer disguised as science fiction. For all its emotional glow, E.T. was a brutal shoot. The children worked long days surrounded by artificial fog and lights that burned through the California heat. Henry Thomas once fainted after a take from exhaustion. Drew Barrymore cried often not from the script, but from homesickness. Spielberg kept candy nearby to lift their moods between takes. The puppeteers inside E.T. endured even more. Each performance required multiple operators synchronizing hand, eye, and breathing movements. The heat inside the suit often reached unbearable levels. One puppeteer collapsed during a long take inside the forest set. The crew learned to keep oxygen tanks nearby just in case. And yet, through all this hardship, came something remarkable. The exhaustion gave the performances truth. When Elliot whispers, "I'll be right here," the tremor in his voice is real. He was tired, heartbroken, and ready to let go. Spielberg later said that the hardest part of the film was not shooting E.T.'s death scene, but wrapping production. The children had lived inside the story for months. When they filmed the final goodbye, they were saying farewell to a friend who had become more real than many adults in their lives. Watch closely the next time you see the film. When E.T. first hides among the stuffed animals, his eyes glint with a faint red hue. That color shift was deliberate. It mirrors Elliot's heartbeat earlier in the film, suggesting an unseen bond forming long before they connect fingers. In the kitchen scene where E.T. explores the refrigerator, listen, or carefully. The hum of the fridge is tuned to the same note as John Williams' main theme, a subconscious cue linking the ordinary to the extraordinary. And when Elliot's bicycle lifts into the night sky, notice the framing. The camera lingers not on the stars, but on the dark line of trees below. Spielberg wanted the audience to feel the pull of gravity, even as Elliot escaped it, hope and fear existing in one frame. These details were never accidents. They were emotional codes hidden inside a family film. They whisper what the dialogue cannot say, that growing up means learning how to love something you know will leave. For Universal, the challenge was how to market something that was not quite a children's movie and not quite an adult drama. Executives worried audiences expecting a loud sci-fi spectacle would reject its quiet tone. Spielberg fought back. He banned the use of the alien's image in early trailers, arguing that mystery was the key. Tension rose when the studio demanded product placements to offset costs. Spielberg allowed a few, but famously refused to feature candy giant M&Ms after they turned down a licensing deal. Instead, he chose Reese's Pieces. The brand's sales reportedly tripled within weeks after release, proving instinct could outplay marketing. There was also conflict among the crew. Cinematographer Alan Daviau wanted darker visual tones to match E.T.'s fear. Spielberg insisted on warm light that felt like a child's memory. They compromised scene by scene until the final cut glowed with nostalgic haze. Every creative battle fed into the film's message connection through conflict. Just as Elliot learns to trust an alien, so too did the cast learn to trust the unfamiliar process that would make history. Here lies the greatest irony of all. A film about an alien stranded on Earth was made by people who each felt like outsiders in their own lives. Henry Thomas shy and withdrawn, Drew Barrymore growing up too fast, Spielberg healing the child he once was. The alien that taught humanity to love again was never truly alien. It was the embodiment of Spielberg's inner child still searching for home. The glowing heart was not science fiction, it was metaphor. The warmth you feel watching it is the warmth of reconciliation, the light that flickers in children of divorce when they learn to forgive. Years later, Drew Barrymore admitted that filming E.T. made her believe the creature was real. Spielberg never corrected her. He let the illusion live, because sometimes believing in kindness, even when it is pretend, is the only way to survive the world. That is the irony no one saw coming. The movie healed its makers as much as it healed its audience. E.T. premiered on June 11, 1982. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Critics wept, audiences returned again and again, and Spielberg became a cultural prophet of empathy. The film grossed nearly $800 million worldwide, an unthinkable sum at the time. But the breakthrough was not just financial. For Henry Thomas, it meant fame he was not ready for. For Drew Barrymore, it meant a path that would lead her through darkness before redemption. And for Spielberg, it meant recognition not as an entertainer, but as a storyteller of human ache. When the cast reunited years later, they spoke less about fame and more about the silence that followed. None of them could find another project that captured the same emotional truth. Thomas once said that every film after E.T. felt like an echo of something he had already lived. John Williams' score became instantly iconic and won the Oscar for Best Original Score in 1983. Spielberg himself said it was the music that carried the heart of the film beyond its script. The world had fallen in love not with an alien, but with empathy itself. E.T. reshaped everything that came after. Science fiction no longer needed to be about technology, it could be about tenderness. Stranger Things owes its DNA to E.T. from its bikes to its suburban loneliness. Even Pixar's emotional structure traces back to this film's rhythm of loss and reunion. The child star model also changed after E.T. Studios realized that emotional truth could come from younger actors if they were guided with care. It set the stage for later performances like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense and Millie Bobby Brown in Stranger Things decades later. Culturally, E.T. bridged a divide between optimism and fear. In the early 80s, Cold War anxieties ran deep. Yet here was a story that told viewers connection could defeat control, curiosity could beat fear. The government agents who chase E.T. became symbols of distrust, the children who save him symbols of hope. The ripple reached beyond cinema. Astronauts named spacecraft modules after the film. Teachers used it to explain empathy to children. Even now, references echo in pop songs and parodies, proving that E.T. never really left Earth. Decades after its release, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial still feels alive. The story never truly ended. It simply went quiet, waiting for each new generation to rediscover it. What makes it endure is not the spaceship or the glowing finger or even the famous bicycle across the moon. It is the emotional pulse beneath it, all the quiet heartbeat of every lonely child who once looked to the stars and whispered for something to answer back. Steven Spielberg created a myth disguised as a family movie, but the myth lasted because it carried truth. Beneath the fantasy was grief. Beneath the adventure was loss. Beneath the laughter was a single question that humanity never stops asking: will I ever be understood? The cast may have grown older and moved on, but that ache stayed locked in the film like light inside amber. Henry Thomas, now an adult actor with decades of experience, often says that no role has touched him the same way. He remembers how Spielberg guided him, not with direction, but with empathy. Instead of shouting action, Spielberg whispered moments that drew real emotion from him. When Thomas cried as E.T. lay dying, it was not performance, it was pure release. That kind of sincerity is almost extinct in modern cinema. Drew Barrymore's journey mirrors the movie's soul. As a child, she embodied innocence, while the world around her blurred that boundary far too early. She once said that she truly believed E.T. was real and would talk to him between takes. That illusion became her shield. She was a 6-year-old living in an adult industry, but on that set she could believe in kindness again. The magic that the audience saw was the same magic she used to survive. Dee Wallace, who played Elliot's mother, has often said that her performance came from her own fear of being a single parent. Spielberg encouraged her to channel that rawness. She later revealed that the film's emotional center was less about science fiction and more about family trying to reconnect after separation. That is why every tear feels personal, because it was. And Spielberg himself carried the heaviest emotion of all. His parents' divorce shaped his childhood more than any alien or adventure. He once said E.T. was the only time he felt he could speak directly to the child he used to be. In the film, Elliot becomes a stand-in for young Spielberg, confused and yearning, while E.T. embodies that sense of otherness, the strange, invisible friend who arrives just when you need him most. E.T. endures because it speaks the universal language of loss and healing. Its structure mirrors life's rhythm. You find love, you lose it, and you learn to go on carrying a piece of it inside you. Every rewatch becomes an act of remembering. The older you get, the more the story changes shape. As a child, you see adventure. As an adult, you see heartbreak. And when you become a parent, you see both sides at once. The film's cinematography also plays a vital role in its lasting power. Alan Daviau bathed each frame in soft golden hues that evoke memory itself. Every dusk scene looks like nostalgia made visible. It feels like watching a dream you half remember from childhood. The suburban streets, the glowing windows, the distant hum of cicadas, they anchor the fantasy in something painfully familiar. That blend of the ordinary and the impossible became the Spielberg signature. Then there is John Williams' score, which functions like the film's second soul. The swelling strings do not just accompany the story, they guide it like emotion incarnate. The main theme rises and falls in perfect harmony with Elliot's arc. You can close your eyes and still feel the entire story through the music alone. That is why even those who have not seen the film in years can still hum its melody. It has become cultural DNA, but the endurance goes beyond craft. It lies in how E.T. taught audiences empathy without preaching it. In an era of Cold War, fear, and distrust, the film dared to say that kindness was the most advanced technology of all. It reminded viewers that difference does not have to be dangerous. It can be divine. Think of the final scene. The spaceship glows, the forest wind rises. Elliot stands there trembling between joy and sorrow. The moment E.T. says, "I'll be right here," it transcends dialogue. It becomes a universal farewell. Parents feel it. Children feel it. Anyone who has ever lost something pure feels it. That is why theaters fell silent when the credits rolled. No explosion, no twist, no speech could top that simple truth. Love never really leaves. Even now you can see its fingerprints everywhere. Filmmakers across generations call it their emotional compass. J.J. Abrams borrowed its lighting and lens flares for Super 8. The Duffer Brothers built Stranger Things as a love letter to its spirit. Pixar's entire storytelling philosophy, Hope Through Heartbreak, traces its origin to that single film. Every time a character befriends a creature, the world fears E.T.'s shadow hovers quietly behind them. The endurance of E.T. also rests in its refusal to age. The practical effects still work because they rely on sincerity rather than spectacle. The puppet is imperfect, deliberately so. It moves awkwardly, breathes unevenly, and looks fragile. That fragility is what makes it believable. In modern cinema, where everything glows with digital polish, E.T. feels alive precisely because it doesn't. It reminds us that imperfection is human and humanity is timeless. Over the decades, the cast has reunited several times. Each gathering turns emotional. Henry Thomas still gets misty-eyed talking about the final goodbye. Dee Wallace calls it a spiritual experience. Drew Barrymore sometimes laughs through tears when she recalls believing E.T. lived in a soundstage closet. They all describe the film as family, not fiction. In 2019, a commercial reunion short brought Elliot back as an adult, introducing his own children to E.T. The project was meant to promote technology, yet it unexpectedly reignited the original magic. Fans cried. Grown men confessed they never expected to feel that ache again. Spielberg reportedly wept when he saw it because it proved that after nearly 40 years, the alien still had power to heal. That is the secret of its endurance. It adapts to time without changing itself. Every generation interprets it differently, yet the heart stays untouched. It speaks to loneliness when you are young, nostalgia when you are old, and hope when you are lost. Few films achieve that trinity of meaning. It also endures because it represents a rare moment in cinema when sincerity was allowed to shine. In an industry obsessed with irony and spectacle, E.T. dared to be tender. It asked viewers not to laugh at emotion but to feel it fully. Spielberg built the story on compassion, not cynicism, and that courage gave the film its immortality. At its core, E.T. is a cinematic prayer whispered through light and sound. It prays that kindness can outlive fear. It prays that home is not a place but a feeling, and it prays that even when we lose the ones who teach us to love, we can carry their light forward. That is why the glow in E.T.'s chest never fades. It was never about an alien heart. It was about ours. Watch closely when the ship disappears into the stars. The lens flares bloom into soft circles of gold. Spielberg used that effect intentionally. Those orbs mirror tears. He wanted the audience to feel what Elliot felt, a sadness so pure it becomes beautiful. That is the emotion that lingers long after the credits fade. The legacy of E.T. has also reshaped how Hollywood treats childhood. It showed that children could be truth-tellers, not props. The film's emotional honesty paved the way for coming-of-age stories that respect young characters as complex beings. Without E.T., there might be no Stand By Me, No My Girl, no bridge to Terabithia. Its DNA runs through them all, and perhaps most profoundly, it endures because it captures something eternal about growing up. Childhood is a brief encounter with magic before reality claims you. E.T. represents that fleeting wonder, the friend who vanishes when you no longer need him, but who leaves you better for having met him. That is the story's ultimate gift. It does not promise eternal happiness. It promises growth. In that sense, the alien's departure is not a tragedy, it is a graduation. Elliot learns that love is not possession, but presence. That lesson follows every viewer who has ever said goodbye to a piece of their past. The film's endurance lies in that shared memory, the bittersweet acceptance that to love deeply is to let go gracefully. So maybe the reason E.T. never fades is because it lives wherever people still dare to care. It lives in the parent comforting a child after the credits. It lives in the artist who remembers their first spark of wonder. It lives in the viewer who sits alone decades later and still feels that glow inside. E.T. is not just a movie, it is an emotion fossilized in light. E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial remains more than a piece of cinema. It is a mirror for every lonely heart that ever reached out and found warmth reaching back. The cast revealed not just secrets of production, but the truth that the story healed them as much as it healed us. Spielberg turned his childhood pain into something luminous. The children turned their innocence into courage. Together, they built a story that taught the world empathy without needing to say the words. So when you watch it again, do not just look for the alien. Look for yourself. Look for the moments when you believed in something impossible and found that it made you more human. E.T. was never about life beyond Earth. It was about life within it, about learning to see the divine in what we call different. Maybe that is why, even now, when the lights dim and that theme begins to swell, hearts everywhere still lift toward the screen, because we are all still waiting for someone to say, "I'll be right here." If that moment still stirs something inside you, tap like share your favorite memory in the comments and let the glow live on. Because as long as someone still believes E.T. never really goes home,